This is the time that we've been waiting for. It's the correction for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Now, the big question here is how long will this last and when is it going to take off again? After the masses got it absolutely, completely wrong over the course of January 2024, looking for massive pumps, telling us that the week leading into the ETF was going to be the biggest hype that we have seen, we didn't get it. And we were right on track with the correction coming after such massive hype. So now that we've put the noise aside, all of the crypto entertainers telling us about the biggest booms in history are out of our way and the correction is on. When do we get in and how long do we have? Let's take a look at the data and the facts and the lines on the chart so that we can identify what's happening on the right-hand side, the black side of the chart, to act as detectives to see what we can uncover for the rest of 2024 and this possibility of massive altcoin gains. Just before we kick off, it is our third birthday sale. The sale is starting tomorrow, so make sure you are subscribed to the TIA Crypto Report. You can see here the link is in top of the video description. Once you become a TIA Premium member, you'll get access to your dashboard. You've got a ton of courses to get through here, plenty of videos stepping you through step-by-step guides to understand how to read the markets and follow the cycles across Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, and real estate. This is your holistic view of the markets, and you can learn how to do that for yourselves. Get on board before we see that next and final stage of the 18.6-year cycle and then the subsequent collapse from that point. The main thing we're looking at in today's video is the Wyckoff Volume Accelerator that I'm going to go through for the altcoins. And also, as a member, you get exclusive discounts for the TIA Gann Swing Indicator, which is something that we look at on a daily basis here. We're going to use that and also the Total Market Cap Indicator, so you can learn how to use those for yourself. Now, if you want to hear from the members themselves, there is a ton of reviews for the course, for the community that you can get access to when you subscribe to the newsletter. There is a link to our free Discord and you can go and check out the reviews there. Now let's kick it off with the S&P 500. It hit another new all-time high price after the masses, the media, the influencers, you name it, they're telling us that we should see a recession in 2023. Now, I repeat this every single video because it is so important to get our heads around how they're wrong every single time and that the market is going to do what the market does. And if we can read what the market is telling us, then we can be on the right side of the market. And at best, protect our profits, because as we continue to lead up into the peaks of these cycles, which we are anticipating sometime in the next couple of years, then we can at least protect our profits from the downside. So we have hit a new fresh all-time high price for the S&P 500. Things are still looking relatively rosy. We do anticipate a correction coming probably around the first quarter of 2024, which is exactly what we are in now. And from that point, things might get a little bit choppy. The second half of 2024 is when things get a little clearer. And I think that is going to also play out for Bitcoin as well. We've got that top in at $49,000. So it might be a little while until we break through that top for BTC. But once we do, the S&P, NASDAQ, real estate, Bitcoin, cryptos, we're going to go ballistic, I think, from the second half of 2024 leading into 2025. And then we really need to get serious about where we start to take profits. So although we absolutely nailed the Wyckoff distribution on Bitcoin for the short-term time frame, I don't know if this is going to last so long. It looks like Bitcoin is trying to find a base here somewhere around the mid to high 30s, which is why I popped up this tweet just a couple of days ago, looking at the possibility that we're not going to see prices under $40,000 for too long. But maybe we sit under $40,000 for several weeks as we lead into that halving. But I think the most important thing here is that we don't get greedy hoping for further and further downside for Bitcoin and for cryptos. As I said, we nailed that top. Market has corrected, but I don't want to get complacent with thinking the market has to go further and further down. So what does that look like on the chart? Well, we've got the 50% moves to the upside because, as we know, when markets correct, they got to come back. They got to bounce back. And as we've looked at with the distribution, what that looks like is the market trying to bounce back, basically rally into any previous lines of support, which then becomes resistance. So we're watching out here for roughly $41,000, as that's the first little 50% level that we're targeting. The next one is the entire range as it currently stands, and that comes out at 43,800. So as an easy number to remember, if you see any rejections from roughly $41,000 or $44,000, that could be further downside. That's simple. That's as simple as we want to make it here for Bitcoin, as the trend is still down using our Gann swing indicator. You can see this yellow line here picks up the exact points for the daily turns, and then it gives you a nice easy look at the trend. You hide the bars or the candles and you can see that trend is clearly down. So if we get that rejection at $41,000 or $44,000, let's look to the downside. And we've got the next major 50%, that ranges from the September low. Remember, this was the period that was extreme fear. I remember the masses, the influencers that tell us all about their fantastic trades and their almost perfect hit rate in trading, saying that the market was about to collapse to 20K. They did that at the exact bottom. That is something that you really want to look for when it comes to market sentiment. What is going on at those exact points? So from that, we basically rallied for 122 days, 4 months, to this peak here at $49,000. Now, in terms of the downside, we have done 12 days and 21.6% to the downside. You guys might recall the previous pullbacks from that top to the September low, 21.8%, but it took 60 days in that case. And also the rally up in April out of the banking crisis. Can you imagine that, how far we've come from the banking crisis? Another 62 days down and roughly 20.3% to the downside. So we've basically done the same correction that the market has done the entire way up, but in a very short period of time. So basically 12 days. That is why if this is the final correction, if that is the lowest point that Bitcoin goes, $38,500, we may still need a little more time at these levels to catch up, play out something similar to what's happened here. That would then line us up to somewhere in around March, just before the halving, and potentially we see the market rise from there. So there's a couple scenarios that we're looking at. One, we remain under these levels and the market just takes its time. Maybe it pushes a little bit lower, but as I've said many, many times, I don't think it's going to go that much lower. And I think that's going to surprise many because we've seen them, they've talked about it, looking for prices under 32 because that's where the previous tops were, looking for the market to come all the way back to that level. And I think maybe the market might surprise in this case, but that's a lot of subjectivity right now. Let's just try and stick to the objectivity and the numbers that the market is actually giving us. And essentially, that's where we sit. We've got the 50% level there at $37,000, plus the previous support and resistance levels just below that at roughly 33.5 up to about 35,000, which at 34,500 is also the 50% pullback from the exact top. So the top was 69,000, half of that is 34,500. So we know the market had a bit of consolidation at that level before we headed up to the final top there at 49,000. And that's why we keep coming back to mid to high 30,000s as a final destination for the price of BTC over this period of time. So I've given you price targets, time targets. Don't be too specific. Go back to this post if you have to. It's not a time to rush, but I just wouldn't be getting greedy in these stages. Now let's turn our attention to the total cryptocurrency market caps as we're looking for the time frames and the price points as to where these altcoins are going to start their 25x returns. And that's specifically looking at what's happened in the previous cycles, looking at time counts as well. So we have our TI Gann swing indicator on the chart here and looking at where we currently are right now in the market. So just the facts from the charts. We are 14 months from the cycle low in November of 2022. And the same period last cycle, 14 months, was also the correction. It was also the correction in February 2020 that pulled the market back into that COVID drop and then basically took off from that point. Now, don't get confused here. I still see comments of people saying that we're going to see a COVID collapse, or they think I'm referring to this next pullback to be a COVID collapse. I am not referring to that whatsoever. So if you see those comments, reply to those guys if you wish. Otherwise, let it go by the wayside. I'm not talking about a COVID collapse. What I am talking about is the possibility of a further correction over the next 1 to 2 months for reasons that we've looked at here on the Bitcoin chart and also for the cryptocurrencies. We've seen it here, 60 days. You guys can do the maths. That's 2 months. We're currently a few weeks into that now, as that peak was roughly the 11th of January. So about 2 weeks into that right now, which means we could see another 2 to 6 weeks of downside or consolidation at a higher price. And I suspect it is going to be at a higher price, somewhere above that sort of $1.26 trillion, as that was where those peaks were. So somewhere around that mid 1.2s to mid 1.4s could be a reasonable area that the total market cap wants to consolidate over the next couple of months before we start to head higher. And from that point, that's where those 25x, 50x, 100x altcoin gains begin from. Now, that is the stage of the cycle that we are in. That is the headlines, the titles, the BS that all of the new people coming into crypto want to see. If you don't believe me, go and have a look at YouTube videos that have that specific title, looking at 50x gains right now. Watch ASAP. You're going to be rich next month. That is what people are looking at. It is getting the most amount of views right now. That to me means that we are definitely into this next stage of the cycle. If we weren't seeing those views and those kick up in subscribers based on that type of content, then I would suspect that we were still in this mid stage here where the market was ready to have a bit of a pullback. But I suspect we're somewhere now in this stage where we've got this last opportunity before the market starts to head up. It may not feel like we're in that final stage of the bull market, that mania stage, because like we can see here, it was still roughly 6 to 8 months before we started to kick into the final leg. This is the mania, the retail stage, where everything goes absolutely ballistic. And essentially, it's the final stage. The masses come in the final stage. Some are going to make some money. The majority are not, because they came so late. It's usually not that bad if you come late, right? But on the downside, they're going to continue to hold because they came to the party late. Whereas most of us now, at least here on this video, they've been here early. So you have had the experience of what it's like to be at the party early, the boring stages, the not so fun part, but now you get to experience the good times to the upside, and hopefully you get to leave the party early. So with all that talking of coming and going, we had to look at the time frames. So 14 months is where we sit. That pullback previously, it's been around 1 to 2 months, like we saw on the previous move up in 2020. Now, from that stage in the market, you have another rally and a pullback. Doesn't always have to happen exactly like this, but you can see we've been playing pretty much to a T when it comes to the time frames of the previous cycle, and then also the pattern of the cycle before the last cycle. So going back to 2015, 16, 17, the pattern seems to be a little more clearer, like the previous cycle, where we've basically broken out, consolidated, and continued on our merry way. So right now, 14 months takes us to this point. Last cycle, 23 months is basically where the market broke out into fresh highs, and around that 22 to 24 month period is where it broke out into new all-time highs, depending on which market you're following. Bitcoin, we know, was about that 22 month stage from the cycle low. For the total cryptocurrency market cap, it was about 24 months. And we're looking at 23 months here as basically the big breakout point out of all of the consolidation. So 23 months takes us to about October this year. So that gives you about 9 months until we get onto that big party train. But prior to that, I think is going to be the time where you'd want to be getting in, not at those stages. There's not going to be anything wrong with getting in there. It's just going to increase the risk because you're higher from those lows now. That's the only thing there. So there's nothing bad about getting in later. You just got to be a little bit more cautious with how you spend your money and how you trade in the markets, because as you get in later, well, those pullbacks can come back to those entry prices. Now, this chart might show it a little bit clearer. You can see we might be here looking at this stage for the market pullback, the move out. The new Bitcoin all-time high came in November 2020, and that is basically 23 months from the cycle low before Bitcoin broke out. And then, of course, this is basically the 2021 altcoin mania. That could start end of 2024, but the majority of it, I think, will be in 2025. Now, for those 25x gains, well, let's look at it from the closing price of March. This could come in February this year, maybe even March, as we lead into that halving cycle, the halving point for BTC. Going just from that closing price, I don't think it's fair to use the bottom of the COVID collapse, because I don't think we're going to come back and test these cycle lows. Of course, I could be wrong, and I think most of us will be happy if that happens, come back and test that in a big bounce up. But nonetheless, I'm going to use it from a higher price and then look towards the peaks of the market. There is your 2100%, your 22x, and to the peak, there is your 2400% or your 25x, just looking at the previous cycle. Of course, these are averages, looking at the total cryptocurrency market cap minus Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so these could be a little bigger depending on which coin you're in, or a little smaller if you're deciding to get on board with old altcoins from the 2021 cycle. So there it is again, from the Bitcoin new all-time high to the peak where we may currently be sitting. It's about a 9-month wait. A 9-month wait until everything goes absolutely bananas. Now, if we don't want to wait until everything goes bananas, you can see essentially there's 1 month to the low, 1, 2, 3 months until the market starts to come back. And in our case, where we currently sit, in about 4 months' time, which is roughly May or June, we could be sitting above that current top there at around 500 billion, or coming into alignment with that price again. So this period over the next sort of 2 to 6 weeks may in fact be one of the best times to be accumulating for that next bull market run, the mania. But we're going to have to be a little bit more patient still from that point. You're still probably going to have to be patient for about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, call it 6 to 8 months from that point of entry over Q1 of 2024. Now, dialing it back to a shorter term time frame, we've just been following all of the monthly charts here. So let's go down to the weekly charts. Again, looking at the total cryptocurrency market cap, except this time we're using the TIA total cryptocurrency market cap. As I said, as a member, you get exclusive discounts to all of these indicators that you can then apply to TradingView. This one specifically shows us that we're excluding Bitcoin, ETH, and excluding all the stable coins, whereas the custom one that comes with TradingView includes all the stable coins. So we want to remove the stable coins so that we get a better view of what's going on in the pure altcoin market, as opposed to using the stable coins as well. In terms of the timeframes here and the pullback, so I've mentioned a lot about why I think it's 2 to 6 weeks. I want to show you using the data from the chart and the current cycle we're in from the low and the previous bear market cycle as well. The moves to the upside, now that we've had the bottom, December 2022 for the altcoins, excluding the stablecoins, 16 weeks up. The next period from the low in September to the current peak we had in late December, 15 weeks up. And the pullbacks have been 7 weeks, 9 weeks, and we are currently into our 4th week. So if we extend it out to roughly 8 weeks, could be somewhere mid-February, throw another week in there like we've seen already. 9 weeks could take us out to the last week of February. Maybe because we've had such a stellar run up, somewhere out to 10 or 11, which would take us into March. But we're going to be on the lookout from around 6 weeks to about that 9 or 10 week mark to see if there's a low coming into these markets, which would be the best opportunity for those next 20, 25, 50x, whatever gain you're looking for. I think that is going to be the opportunity there. Q1, Q2 of 2024. Now, what about for those perma bears, the bears that think the market's going down? Well, we're not going to spend that much time on it, but just to show you why it's most likely not going to collapse from this point, and all of the recession fear and the double top nonsense and all this sort of BS that comes through with the traditional markets, which would and will scare Bitcoin and crypto if it happens, and eventually when it happens, but it's not now. Looking at the cycle itself here, we had 15 weeks down and only 8-week rallies. This one here, this rally was about 5 weeks to the upside, then you had another significant move to the downside. So you can see how the tables have turned now at the beginning of the cycle. We're not at the end stages of the cycle like this craziness, but we are at the first, probably into the second phase now for altcoins. And I want to show you that on the Wyckoff accumulation chart for the altcoins now. So you guys may recall back from November, so about 2 months ago, we were watching this pattern play out for an accumulation on the altcoins. It was taking longer than Bitcoin, but nonetheless, here we are right now. We were looking at it being latest, like a late phase C or phase D. Now, you can see from here, it does look like we're in a phase D. We're going to have a bit of a correction and a pause, which is lining up with absolutely everything that we've talked about today. Of course, we can always be incorrect, but I'm just using the info and the analysis to my best ability, as you guys can also do if you want to become a TI premium member. Check out the links for all of the course content there. So just looking at the accumulation schematic, which we absolutely nailed for Bitcoin, you guys were around to see that. Essentially, I think it's probably the same stage now. We're having this pullback, and eventually we're going to blow up into phase E, which comes later in 2024, maybe even as early as Q2 in 2024. So I would confidently say now that we are in phase D. We can get rid of the phase C on that, and we're just starting to play out these last points of supply, which is what LPS is, and then BU is backup. So basically, it's a backup, last point of supply. The market is testing to see if there are still any more sellers out there, and the last of all of the best altcoins are going to get scooped up at this stage before we then head higher later in 2024. So here is our Wyckoff schematic. We can see what phase D represents. If we're correct in our analysis, what should follow is the consistent dominance of demand over supply. So that's so far what we have seen. Market up, demand and supply and demand is getting exceeded here. We're seeing the exceeding on the demand side than the supply. Got those words out right. This is evidenced by the pattern of advances, signs of strength, that's your SOS, on widening price spreads and increasing volume, as well as reactions, last points of supply, on smaller spreads and diminished volume. So volume is a big one here. As I said, this is part of the Wyckoff course here, the Wyckoff Volume Accelerator. That's what Wyckoff focused a lot on. Check out the volume to the upside. It's all increasing. That is your white bars here. And to the downside, that's your red bars there. So that's diminishing compared to the previous area of the market. Spreading those gains to the upside, more volume to the upside, less price movement to the downside compared to that move up, and less volume as well, meaning there are less sellers in the market than there was previously when the market was collapsing. See lots and lots of sellers there. So I think we have now officially, almost officially, nailed yet another accumulation schematic on the macro scale here for the altcoins. We want to see that phase E get confirmed, and I'd say that we're just about there, and we'll probably see that within the first half of 2024. Thanks again, guys. The third birthday sale is on this week. Make sure you are subscribed to the email list. And I've got a question for you guys today for the altcoins. Do you think this analysis is on track, or do you have a differing opinion? It's absolutely okay to have a differing opinion. We're all here to make money in the markets. Let us know. It's in the pinned comment section down below. I'll see you at the next video. Until then, take care and peace out.